Now picture this. Here we see Clayval in a bit of a pickle. The director had planned to meet with 3 newly enrolled students to hand over their starter Pokemon. He chose to visit the player first, and because of this, we got to pick between the 3 he had at the ready. But then Nimona came along and took one for herself. Whatever will the director do? He had still arranged to meet with 2 more students that day, but only had 1 Pokemon remaining. What if the director needed a 4th starter Pokemon? Hello and welcome to today's show, where I will be continuing my series on what each region's 4th starter Pokemon would be, finally tackling the newest region of Paldea. If you are new to my channel, then hello! My name is Ulmo. I often stream as well as discuss my thoughts and theories on the Pokemon franchise. For example, my past video finding the 4 starters throughout Generation 1 through 8, which you can find either above me or down below. I would recommend watching that video beforehand, as you'll gain a better understanding of my method going forwards. However, here is a brief refresher to any returning viewers. While looking over Pokemon Yellow and the Pokemon anime, I came to a realization that a lot of people see Pikachu as the 4th starter of the Kanto region. And in Pokemon Red, Blue and Green, we know that the closest place Professor Oak could go and capture one to hand over to new trainers is within Viridian Forest. Via crossing Route 1, then heading through Viridian City, to then finally crossing into Route 2, where he would then capture the Pokemon with the lowest encounter rate, which in this forest would be Pikachu at 5%. So I took this idea and placed it within every following game throughout the main franchise, having the professors travel without the use of HMs exactly 2 routes and 1 city, until finding and capturing the rarest Pokemon in that final location. As Scarlet and Violet's protagonists gain their starter from the Naranja Academy and not the Professor's laboratory, the Academy will be used as our starting location. The city of Misagona has 3 entrances, leading out to the south, east, and west, meaning we'll have to explore all 3 and grab the rarest encounter from each one before moving forwards. Heading south, as this direction is currently the only route with relevant data on every Pokemon's encounter rate. However, these rates are listed differently from games of the past. In prior generations, Pokemon's encounter rates have been determined by a random percentile, for example, Pikachu having a 5% encounter within Viridian Forest. In Generation 9, instead of percentages, we must deal with the new spawning rarity metric of common, uncommon, rare, and finally, very rare. So to alter my method to work with this generation, we'll simply replace finding the Pokemon with the lowest random percentage, and instead, Clayval will be selecting the Pokemon with the rarest spawn rate. Here is his journey when entering South Province Area 1. Going by my method, he must travel this pass until he passes through a town or a city, which wouldn't take the director long, as he quickly passes through Lost Plateau. However, upon leaving the town, he is once again placed in the same area of South Province Area 1. So, for the sake of simplicity, he will keep travelling until he reaches the next area, and in this case, for our south route, his travels will take him to Poco Path. With the director having passed 2 different routes and 1 town, he must scout out the area and find the rarest Pokemon out of the bunch. Luckily, this is made easier for us, as this section of the map is the only location which currently has recorded details on different Pokemon's rarities, with 12 total species roaming the path. Now looking over the information on the wiki, we can see that there is a clear choice for our 4th starter candidate, Pawmi. As the remaining Pokemon in Poco Path have a rarity rating of either common or uncommon, while Pawmi has a rating of rare. With no competition, they'll be taking the candidate spot for the southern route. Now comes the tricky part, and why this video was delayed for so long. As mentioned, only the southern section has listed the species and rarity of Pokemon on their wiki pages. Both west and eastern paths are bare when it comes to information online. As I am not a data miner, the only option I had for a while was to simply wait and see if more info would be released over time. However, at the time of recording, nothing new has surfaced. So I decided that with the assistance of a very strict professor, that we would take matters into our own hands with some good old-fashioned field research. With the help of Professor Almond and his assistant, we devised a way to use my method while estimating the rarity of Pokemon found along the western and eastern routes. So here is how we did it. First, we would determine which route our candidates would spawn in. Heading east from Misagoza, we find ourselves crawling through the hills of South Province Area 3, with the paths levelling out through Artisan, until we reached the grassy slopes of East Province Area 1, the location of our east candidate. Meanwhile, going west into South Province Area 2, we ride through Cortondo before crossing the border into West Province Area 1, the location of our west candidate. I will be excluding the roaming Terra Pokemon, as none of the original starting trio have a Terra type different from their own. To keep in line with my method, we are also not allowed to use our rideable Pokemon to cross any body of water, nor can we use them to climb to areas that would otherwise be outside our player's reach. This is to fit with the idea that Professor Oak only needed to walk in order to capture Pikachu, and didn't require anything like HMs. With that plan all laid out, let's go ahead and determine each Pokemon's rarity. As our assistant and Necaridon travels between point A and point B, Professor Almond will be noting down what Pokemon we pass, as well as the quantity seen. The pair will repeat this process twice in a day and twice at night, tallying the total number of sightings to see which Pokemon has the highest spawn rate rarity. Only first stage Pokemon will be counted, as this seems to make the most sense when you consider that these Pokemon will be handed out as starters. I understand this might have been a lot to take in, which is why if you are confused, I would recommend watching the last episode, as this is basically the same method but with some additional steps. While we're in this brief intermission, I would like to ask that if you've been enjoying my content so far, then please consider subscribing. As a small content creator, it would mean the world and really help my channel grow. With that said, here are the findings of our research. To designate the category of each Pokemon, I have decided on the following. Any Pokemon spotted more than 15 times will be considered common. 11 to 15 will be listed as uncommon. 6 to 10 will be rare. And finally, any Pokemon seen 5 times or lower will be valued as very rare and will be considered the best candidates for their respective areas. Starting over at East Province Area 1, to my amazement this section of the Paldean region had a staggering amount of Pokemon. We charted a total of 30 different first stage Pokemon here. On the screen behind me, I've listed them all, as well as what rarity rating they scored. As for which Pokemon fell into the very rare category, with the large amount of Pokemon roaming around these grassy hills and beautiful beaches, it was surprising that only 4 Pokemon were rarely seen. These Pokemon were Skidoo, Makihita, Shroodle, and
Charcadet,
making them our East Route candidates. I'll be narrowing down our choices once all candidates from every area has been revealed. While West Province 1 is a much longer route than the one discussed prior, across our travels we actually spotted less creatures, roughly 21 first stage Pokemon. To which there was then no surprise when seeing a lower turnout for Pokemon landing in the very rare category. These Pokemon being Tinkatink, Flabebe, and once again,
Charcadet.
Another major difference with this route and its candidates is how they spawned. Both Tinkatink and
Charcadet
had fixed spawn locations, with the Metalsmiths running about in some ruins, while only one of our mini Megamans can be found inside of a small grotto alongside the mountain's edges. Though the most shocking was Flabebe, as while spawning in patches of flowers makes complete sense, what surprised me was that over the 4 runs across the West Province, this Pokemon was only encountered once. Thus, we have our candidates for Paldea's 4th starter. Running down the list, we have Pawmi, Skidoo, Makihita, Shroodle, Flabebe,
Charcadet,
and Tinkatink. However, here is where we reach a divide. If I was to go off my rule set completely, then Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's 4th starter Pokemon would be the Fairy type Flabebe, as it was the Pokemon that I had seen the least while travelling. Even though I only spotted other Pokemon like Skidoo twice in the East Province, the more we moved west, the more common this Pokemon became. This is also similar for Pokemon like Pawmi and
Charcadet,
where in certain locations, that Pokemon can only spawn in one spot, but as the player ventures elsewhere, do these Pokemon become much more common. So going off my rule set, Flabebe would be the choice for Claval's 4th starter, as it was only seen once across all 3 locations throughout my research. Flabebe is a Pokemon with 3 stages in its evolutionary line, and with it also having a unique type when compared to the original trio, I think it makes for a nice option for the director. The only real issue I can see is some viewers being disappointed that the final selected Pokemon wasn't one that debuted in Pokemon Scarlet or Violet. While this factor has never deterred me in my past decisions from selecting certain Pokemon, for curiosity's sake, let's remove all the Pokemon from prior generations, leaving us with Shroodle,
Charcadet,
and Tinkatink. Unfortunately for some,
Charcadet,
will be removed from the running, as they were spotted alongside both the western and eastern routes, leaving us with Tinkatink and Shroodle. And while both were only encountered on one route and had similar sightings, if we were going off of my own preference, I would have to choose Tinkatink. My reason being that while both choices have different types when compared to the other starters, Tinkatink feels more appropriate as a starter Pokemon, in a thematic sense. As throughout its line, the Tinkatink family learns to not only become better at their crafts, but they also learn how to better use the tools in which they created. Just like how the player starts their story as a new student, taking their time to train and study, ultimately ending up as the next champion. So therein lies the answer for Clavel. If he ever needed to find himself a 4th starter for new attendance of the Naranja Academy, then he could either present them with a Flabebe or Tinkatink. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, and would like to hear me fix my mistakes from my previous episode, then stick around. Do you have any different methods or final picks for the 4th starter of the Paldean region? If so, let me know by leaving a comment down below. Have you ever wondered what Pokemon the Professor would use in battle? Then you could watch a video discussing just that over on my YouTube channel. Now, I'll stop stalling, and try to correct the mistakes I made for the 4th starters of the Alolan and Galar region. For Alola, I stated that Professor Kukui gives away starter Pokemon, which is completely incorrect. The player receives their first Pokemon on the Kahuna, Palau, within Iki Town. If we continue the rule set of travelling one route, passing through the next city, and then catching the lowest encountered Pokemon within the next route, then Halao would find himself on Route 2. This path doesn't land the Kahuna in the outskirts of Halui City. While this means we no longer have Alolan Grimer as our 4th starter Pokemon for this region, Alolan Raticate will instead be taking this spot, being one of the 3 Pokemon with a 10% encounter rate on Route 2 within Sun and Moon, the other 2 being Smeargle and Yangoose. Smeargle is removed as it's the only one of the 3 that can appear both in the day and at night, making it more likely to be encountered than the other 2. Rattata takes this spot away from Yangoose because, like with Alolan Grimer, I wanted a Pokemon that represented the newly added feature of regional form variants. In Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, however, this list becomes much broader, adding Pokemon like Frufro, Abra, Alolan Meowth, Spearow, Cutiefly, and Growlithe to the potential running. However, with these Pokemon sharing the same encounter rate of 10%, along with the 2 Pokemon from the original games, 2 additional species can be found on this route, with a rate of only 5%, Drowsy, and Makuhita, via ambush encounters depending on the time of day. So what the protagonist gets depends on what time the Kahuna catches his Pokemon, or he just sticks to Alolan Rattata. Maybe that's where youngster Joey got his. What do you mean he uses a Metapod? Ugh. Moving on to our final correction, we head over to the Galar region. Once again I made the blunder of assigning a professor as the person who gives away starter Pokemon. As in Sword and Shield, this task was left up to the Pokemon League champion, Leon. So seeing as his hometown is listed as Postwick, even though to be honest as the champion he could travel anywhere to capture Pokemon, we'll still be using this town as our starting point. Unlike last time, we can no longer venture into the Slumbering Weald, meaning that Galarian Stunfisk is removed as a candidate. Instead, Leon can travel to Route 2, via Wedgehurst. As we aren't allowed to fish or cross the lake, this leaves the champion with the options of a 5% Hoothoot within the grasses, a 2% Galarian Zigzagoon as a visible encounter, and finally, either a single Yamper or Chewtle as wandering Pokemon. With the original, I used the newly added wild area as a mean to narrow down the final candidates. However, this time, Leon cannot make it over to this portion of the map, so instead, we'll be going off the newly added feature of wandering Pokemon, giving us Yamper or Chewtle. As for which one makes the final cut, I'll be going with Yamper, as it means we don't have multiple water types to choose from. And with that, I hope to correct some of my past mistakes from that last episode. I'm still planning on applying this method to Pokemon Legends sometime in the future, as well as some of the spin-offs. So if you enjoyed the video, and want to see more content like this, then let me know by leaving a like, a comment, or subscribing to my channel. I have many more discussion videos which I recommend checking out. But until next time, I hope you enjoyed the show. Hey you, finally awake. You were trying to cross the border, right?